An entitled Karen refuses to clean up after her pet's droppings in our apartment complex, claiming that everybody else does it around here, while also calling me entitled for calling her out for not doing what she's supposed to do. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction with this entitled Karen. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I'm still trying to process an exchange I had this morning. I was sitting on my balcony having breakfast, and there was this woman I've never spoken to walking her dog. We've never spoken, but my roommate and I see her down there pretty much every day. If I were to guess, she's probably around our age, so either in her 30s like us, or maybe even in her 40s. We've never exchanged so much as a hello up to this point. Now, I really like my apartment complex. It's cute and pleasant to walk around, and the only thing that really sucks is when people don't clean up after their dogs. It's so freaking gross, and I hate when people don't do it. You're a grown-up who made a choice to have a pet. That comes with responsibilities that you have to keep up with. Now, most people around here do clean up after their dogs that I've seen, so we know that it's just a few rotten eggs. If I see people who don't look like they're doing it, I definitely call them out, which I know will come with some kind of risk, but like, come on people. The response is sometimes just defensive, sometimes a bit of twisting the truth, saying things like, oh, I was just gonna go do it, but they all should know that they should be doing it. Anyways, this woman has her dog right up by our balcony, and my friend and I were chatting until I noticed the woman walking away without cleaning it up. So I said, in a tone more polite than the situation probably merited, excuse me, are you going to clean up after your dog? And it's then that this entitled Karen says to me in a snotty voice, no, I'm good, thank you. Well, when I heard that, I immediately burst out laughing. And this is not the kind where it's in good humor, because I couldn't believe the audacity. I said to her, wow, that's really pathetic, which is apparently more than what she expected me to do, because she came marching back. Now, I have to imagine that most people just don't call this woman out. For her to have that kind of immediate vitriol makes me think that she's kind of spoiled just in general and was angry that I had embarrassed her. But she clearly knew that I was right, because she just had to come back and double down. So she comes running at us with this kindergarten logic. She says to us, I'm not the only one who doesn't clean up after my dog. Lots of people don't clean up after their dogs around here. And I was like, okay, so what? How does that absolve you of adding to the problem? She keeps going on about how other people do it too. So I said to her, cool, then give me their names. Let's have a list because I don't see any of them right now. She then looked at me and said, open your eyes and figure it out yourself. I then said, well, that's what I'm doing right now. She eventually keeps shouting that she doesn't have to do anything that she doesn't want to, and that she doesn't care about what I think. So I was like, oh my God, I have never met such an entitled person. It's insane to me that you're getting this angry over someone expecting basic decency out of you. Then she says something that honestly really blew my mind. She looked at me and said, no, you're the entitled one. When this entitled Karen said that, I burst out laughing again. I said to her, I clean up after my animals. Me telling you I don't appreciate you leaving messes on our shared property doesn't make me entitled. You are a grown woman who knew what responsibilities she'd have when she got a pet. There are tons of other people who don't want to see your dog's droppings. You're not the main character of this story, lady. Now, at this point, I feel like this woman has never really been confronted beyond her first snarky response, and I have a bubbly and friendly tone normally, so she probably had expected to scare me or shock me into silence with that callous initial reaction, because right now she is practically melting down. She's trying to upset me while my friend and I are just laughing. She gave me a snarky, well, have a nice day, and I wished her the same in an equal tone, and then she waddled off. We did take a short video of her, sadly not of the incident itself, as we had to go grab our phones, and I plan to take it to the front office just to let them know what's going on. It's honestly only step one. I doubt anything will be done with just this, but this has been driving me crazy, and I'm ready to start holding rude people accountable. Fortunately, I can use the corporate offices if the people here don't start to put pressure on people who blatantly break their lease. It's right there that you have to clean up after your animals. I'm not trying to get anyone evicted, but I'm hoping she at least feels the pressure to act like a grown-up and take care of her stupid pets. Like, I would not cry if she got a fine or something like that. Seriously though, it's painful to me that people like this even exist. She was so confident that she was somewhat in the right that she didn't even try to lie about it. Like, lady, you aren't 12 years old, and the argument that other people do it is not gonna hold up in a court of law. Wow, that is some serious entitlement. Imagine letting your dog go to the bathroom all over the place, and then you don't even take the time to like clean it up. And then when someone confronts you about it, instead of being like, oh, my bad, let me get it real quick, you decide to be like, no, this is your problem. You're entitled for trying to make me do that. Like, that's crazy to me, and this Karen absolutely needed needed to be called out. So seriously, good for the original poster because they handled this like a pro. They didn't let this lady get the best of them, and they shut her down by giving back the same energy that she was giving off. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My coworker constantly acts aggressive towards a select few people at our restaurant, and now I'm trying my best to figure out how to avoid her or just completely ignore her altogether because I truly am very frustrated, and at this point, I'm seriously unsure of what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been employed at a small restaurant for some time now, and there's one coworker who is one of our new hires. Management expects us to train them, but she is nowhere near as skilled as the others who started at the same time as her. However, she's very good at pretending to work in front of the store owner and pretends to be very nice and committed in front of other staff members just to endear herself to them. Well, except for those that she thinks are too stupid to notice that she's useless, even when she isn't even trying to hide it. During work, depending on who's there, she makes it very clear that she considers this job to be beneath her. She suddenly disappears to the restroom without telling anyone, and then she'll return 20 minutes later. She hands out free food and drinks to customers for no reason, and will even steal food for herself. She never admits to even the smallest mistake that she makes, even though they aren't a big deal at all, and overall, she is very unreliable and doesn't do her part of the work. We work in very small teams, each shift of about 4 people. And you know what? I actually really wouldn't care that much if it wasn't for her attitude. A middle manager has asked her to do parts of her job that she seemingly sees as dirty or tiresome, so she has decided to bully her by going to the store owner and painting the middle manager as a mean person, which the store owner now believes because she only knows the new hire on her best behavior. She's also started acting aggressively towards me. I don't even give her instructions unless she seems to be completely in over her head, and this is because I don't want to end up like the middle manager. When our eyes happen to meet, she gives me the biggest death glare. She sighs right next to my ear and even violently threw herself against me and shoved me before running off, something that she's apparently done to the middle manager too. I've decided that her behavior is way too childish for me, and I will be ignoring and avoiding her as much as possible. So honestly, how can I go about doing this? Because at this point, I'm very frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so you have a few options in my opinion. You can definitely go with your option of saying, all right, I'm just gonna ignore them and avoid them as much as possible. But trust me, that's not gonna solve anything. It's only gonna give this person a license to keep bothering you and will only hinder your work as a whole. Like, you're always gonna be thinking about where this person is, or like how she's behaving, and like, do you have to deal with her today or anything like that. That sounds incredibly stressful, and I would not want to deal with that if I was in your shoes. So instead, if I was in this situation, I would get the middle manager and I would go with them to the main manager and explain exactly what's going on. I would not only expose her for being completely useless at work, but also for the fact that she violently threw herself against you. Like, she literally shoved you and then ran off. Like, I don't care what her motivation was. That is not something that you do to a coworker that you barely know. Now, if you were friends and like you hung out after work and you've known each other for a long time and you have this friendly repertoire where you like play around with each other, then fine, this might be explainable. It wouldn't be totally unexplainable, and it would be maybe like this fun thing that you do at work. But this is literally not that case. She just attacked you and then ran off like a complete weirdo, and that alone is completely inappropriate. Like, it starts with her shoving you and then it leads to like completely different directions that I just don't think are okay. So hopefully this gets better sooner than later, because what you're describing sounds absolutely obnoxious, and I know if I worked there, I would be miserable dealing with this lady on a daily basis. Am I the jerk for the way I talk to my neighbor, all because she's been acting weird around my husband? Because now, as a result, things have gotten really weird, and at this point, I'm really not sure if I overreacted. Here's what happened. Okay, so my family, namely myself, my husband, and my 2 daughters, live directly across from our neighbor who is, from what I remember, 6 months pregnant. For the sake of the story, we'll call her Sarah. Sarah is not her real name. Our neighbor grew close when her husband passed away 2 months ago due to a drunk driver. The entire neighborhood basically came to help. The community still does semi-monthly barbecues and stuff like that. Now, we know how it felt to have a parent that's absent. And while no, my husband did not pass away, he was still deployed when we were pregnant with our first. And yes, I know that is not the same thing as what she's going through. But regardless, we often checked on her, invited her over, and we would have conversations on how to handle being on your own while pregnant. For a couple of weeks now, she's been asking my husband to be her handyman. My husband has no issue with this, and neither did I until about a week ago. She asked my husband to help over the smallest things and barely talks to me anymore. Most times she'll knock and ask if my husband is home, and if I say no, she tells me to let him know she needs him and then just walks off. There's no talking, there's no having tea together, absolutely nothing. Now, I can admit I am a little bit jealous and I felt a little bit weird about this. It was like she was only wanting my husband around. I tried to push these feelings aside until the first incident occurred. Basically, she knocked on my door and handed me a covered plate of cookies. I got excited and started to thank her, stating how the girls love cookies. But she then interrupted me and told me that these were strictly for my husband. They were not for the rest of the family. Well, I then had a sour taste in my mouth, but I thanked her anyways. It made me feel like she was trying to have a big house and little house situation. I let my husband know what happened and how I felt, and he assured me that nothing was going on, but he also agreed that what she did was very disrespectful. So we agreed that he would stop coming over, and instead he would give her phone numbers of men he knows that do maintenance. Well, now she's been cold with us, which then leads us to the second incident. This happened when the community was having a barbecue in our neighborhood park. The children were running around and us adults were sitting with the lawn chairs talking about whatever. My neighbor piped up and said how she is grateful to us for helping her, and then said she's even grateful for me, even though according to her, it was strange how I basically forbade my husband from coming over to help her anymore. And when she said that, I got a little mad. Like I was basically slapped by God himself. So I responded and said, well, baking a gift for my husband only and saying his wife and daughters aren't included is a bit strange as well. Pretty quickly, another neighbor changed the topic, and trust me, it was very awkward. Now, I'm sure there's gossip and other stuff going on right now. On one hand, I know she must still be grieving, and maybe she's just looking to have someone to be there for her. But on the other hand, I feel like the incident with the cookies and then the barbecue makes me feel disrespected. My husband is not happy with how I responded. He says it is not my job to check someone, and I should have just let her talk. So I guess I just need to know if I was a jealous jerk through all of this, because at this point, I'm honestly not sure what to do. Okay, so in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk in this scenario, because I think what your neighbor did is very manipulative. I mean, they seriously made baked goods for your husband, and instead of being like, oh yeah, anybody can have it, she tried to make these stupid rules and be like, oh yeah, you can't have it, but only your husband can have it. And it's like, I'm sorry, that's really strange, and that's really just not okay. This is literally someone's husband you're talking about. You can't just dictate who can or can't eat those stupid baked goods. And then for her to make this big public display about it, and her to be like, oh yeah, thanks for the help, but thanks also for denying your husband coming to my house. Like that, in my opinion, was super inappropriate, and it's right about then that I absolutely would get upset as well. Because sure, she's grieving the loss of her husband, and I totally understand that, but the way she acted and the way she tried to embarrass you in front of everybody, in my opinion, absolutely deserved to get shut down. Because that is inappropriate, and you should not be forced to have your name dragged through the mud, all because of someone else's problems. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that I'll never let her husband adopt me, and that she just needs to get over it? Because at this point, they seriously won't let this issue go. And now I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so to start things out, my parents broke up when my mom was pregnant with me. My dad was in the military when I was little, and when I was 5 years old, he came home all messed up from what he had seen, and he was never the same ever again. He ended up doing a lot of substances because medications and therapy weren't helping him, and he was doing really badly. I would see him cry a lot and hold his head, and I know he had flashbacks and relived stuff while I was there, but I never felt unsafe. Just really sad that my dad was hurting. My mom ended up suing for full custody and got more custody of me, but I still got to see my dad every other weekend. Now, my mom hated it and she tried to fight that, but the court-appointed therapist said that I should still have every other weekend with my dad. My mom got married to Dan when I was 9 years old. After they got married, the two of them sat me down and asked me how I would like Dan to be my dad legally, and that the three of us could all be a family. Now, when they said that, I told them that I already had a dad and I didn't want another one. We went back to court and I found out while speaking to the judge that it was because my mom had tried to sever Dad's parental rights and put in a petition for Dan to adopt me. The judge asked me how I felt about it, and I got so scared that he would do it, and I begged him not to. And I said that I didn't want Dan to be my dad, and I didn't want to lose my dad. Well, the judge listened and denied the adoption request. My mom and Dan still fight against me seeing my dad. Mom has taken my phone from me a few times, all because Dad and I would text during the week. When I was 12 years old, my mom told me that my dad had picked substances over me, and that now I have Dan who would never do that to me. She told me he would be a much better better father. But I told her that Dan wasn't my dad, and no matter how much she hates Dad or thinks he's terrible, I just disagree because I love him, and Dan will never be able to compete with that. Dan has asked me himself a few times to let me adopt him, and he told me that he loves me and wants so badly to be able to look after me. He told me if anything happened to Mom, he would hate to see me live with Dad and be taking care of him. But I told him I would rather be with my dad than stay with him. You know, someone who isn't my dad. He got mad a couple of times, and a couple of other times he told me I was showing how young I was. So my mom decided to approach Dad and ask him to willingly give up his rights so that Dan can adopt me, and then she would let me call him once a week and see me once every 2 months. Well, Dad said no, and Mom just cursed him out. I waited until she was done, and I told her I'll never let her husband adopt me and she needs to get over it. She told me she cannot understand me dismissing a good man who loves me and would do anything for me all over a man who can't get off illegal substances for me. I told her that Dan doesn't have to live with the demons my dad does. She told me I'll regret my decision in the future and that I'm being stubborn for no reason. So honestly, I really need to know, am I the jerk for the way I've been acting? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. I don't think you're the jerk for several reasons, but mostly for the fact that your mom and Dan have been basically trying to force you to get adopted by Dan. Like, that in and of itself is so inappropriate, it's not even funny. Like, you would think after the first few times of you growing up, where you blatantly say, yeah, I'm not gonna get adopted by Dan, they would eventually get the picture and be like, okay, it's just not gonna happen. But no, they have forced this issue for years at this point. They keep coming back to the judge, to you, even to your father, and they keep saying, okay, it's time to give up parental rights, almost using it as if it's some kind of like bartering chip for you to have more contact with your father. Like, that is crazy to me, and that is seriously such an unfair precedent to set. It really sounds like your father has a lot of things he's got going on in his life, and you at least know that you love him and you still want him to be in your life. So for your mom and your stepfather to act this way, honestly, is so intrusive and just incredibly rude. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, and the fact that your mom simply won't let this situation go, in my opinion, is incredibly inappropriate. My now ex-girlfriend says that I'm out of order for still expecting her to pay her half of the rent, despite the fact that she's moving out before our lease is over. And right now, I am very frustrated with this situation, because without her paying her half of the rent, I seriously don't know how I'm going to be able to afford this place. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been with my partner for 3 years, and we've lived together for around a year and a half. The last few months or so, I have realized that I'm not happy in the relationship, and a lot of the effort seems to be one-sided. Whenever I've tried to talk to my partner about it, she gets defensive instead of actually listening to what I'm trying to say, or she will just dismiss what I've said and act like there's nothing wrong. I have tried multiple times over the last few months to talk about how I'm feeling and some of the concerns I have, and I've just been shut down every single time. After being dismissed yet again, I told her we needed to talk. I told her I wasn't happy in the relationship and that I think it's best if we break up. She asked me what had brought it on, and I pointed out the repeated dismissals of my concerns, and she denied it happening, but I told her it's best if we just end things. I do still love her, and I wish her the best and everything like that, but I don't want to be in a relationship with her anymore. Well, the issue came along when we started discussing living arrangements. I have no family or friends nearby that I could stay with, and we have 8 months left on the lease. We both transfer half of the rent to our landlord each month. All the bills are in my name. The cost to end the lease early is 6 months rent or the remainder of the lease, basically indicating whichever is smaller, but we wouldn't have that much money just to pay the lump sum. I told my girlfriend I was happy to take the couch for now and then look at getting a little bed for the spare bedroom, since the apartment is both of our homes. She said she would probably just move back home with her parents, but then said she would not be paying the rent and bills when she moves out. I told her while she might not be living here, she's still on the lease, so she still has to pay her half of the rent until we can find a roommate to move in after she's moved out. I said I would still be paying all of the utilities, but I can't afford the full price of the place on my own. She then said that she's not going to be paying for somewhere that she doesn't live, but I tried explaining that she's still on the lease for the apartment, so until we find a roommate for the spare room, she should be paying for her half. She again said that she won't be paying, and that I'm a jerk for expecting her to. So at this point, I'm really not sure what to do here, as this situation seriously has me very stressed out. Wow, your ex is absolutely ridiculous right now. She's very clearly on the lease, and she's gonna sit there and be like, oh no, I'm not gonna pay for it, sorry. Like, what a jerk. Why would she do that to you? Like, I I understand you guys are breaking up or whatever, but at least be mature and try to be reasonable about this. Like, there's no reason to throw your ex under the bus all because you're trying to move out. It's also hilarious to me that she's trying to turn this around and be like, wow, you're such a jerk for doing this. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? You are literally on the lease. You have to pay your half of the rent. And it's ridiculous for the original poster to be expected to pay for all of this. So in my opinion, based on the way your ex-girlfriend is acting, it is definitely time to find a new roommate and fast. She is clearly trying to pull the rug out from underneath you, and she's trying to get out while the getting's good. And in my opinion, that is incredibly toxic, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.